pleasure to be with you today. For the Love of Freedom is my new show where we meet guests who are disrupting the status quo in pursuit of bringing freedom to the world, whether it's political freedom, spiritual, financial, or some other arena of life. And today, I'm joined by a gentleman who's been at the forefront of the fight for political freedom in Utah, Phil Lyman. He's been on the State of Freedom with Chris and I a number of times during his 2024 race for governor, and he's with me today to talk not only about the fight itself, but why he's taken on the cause of freeing the state of Utah from the oppression and tyranny of its own state level deep state. And those of you who are listening from Louisiana know that ours is alive and well and thriving, unfortunately. Before we get into it, I always love to bring a scripture of the day to help ground us and to set the tone for the conversation. And the scripture for today is Psalm chapter 115, verse 16. And it says, "The heavens belong to our God. They are his alone, but he has given us the earth and put us in charge." And Phil, I thought that was so appropriate for the show with you because you have not taken this lying down. You recognize that God, we are the hands and feet of God, and we have work to do. He expects us to take dominion over the earth. He said, multiply and subdue the earth, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do through our various means. But absolutely, that's something that I see you doing through your just relentless efforts in Utah. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on again. It's always so good to talk to you. So refreshing.
Oh, well, I love that. And you are welcome here anytime and on the State of Freedom anytime. We've really
Yeah.
enjoyed you and we believe in the work that you're doing in Utah. It's been so crazy to see your story. I was talking to my parents about it last night and I was just reminding them, a little bit about it. And it was just like, it's almost like the people who are in the grown-ups in charge of Utah, if we want to talk about it that way, seem to just be like, well, yeah, okay, I know you think you won, and I know the numbers actually say that you won, but you didn't really win. And the goalposts kept moving and changing the whole entire way, and the rules kept changing to suit the people in pursuit of power. And that is just bizarre and lame and, I mean, un-American.
From the running for the governor's spot, I was a legislator for 6 years before that, and I told people I'm not upset about the elections because I lost the governor's race. I ran for the governor because I was upset about the corruption in the elections, and all we did was confirm all of these issues. So, early on, there's two ways to get on the primary ballot as a Republican. One is through the convention, and the other is by gathering signatures. Well, I won the convention with almost 70%, which is unprecedented, especially against an incumbent governor.
Yeah.
Um, Spencer Cox is really, really unpopular. Uses his pronouns, joined the Climate Corps, implemented DEI, did all these things over the 4 years that I was observing, and I thought there's no way that Utah will elect this person.
Yeah.
Um, and certainly that was borne out at the convention. But then he got his. Then he said, "Well, I'm on the primary ballot because I got signatures." And any other candidate that has signatures, you could just call up and say, "Can I review? If you're his opponent, can I review the signature packets?" It's like, "Oh yeah, come in Tuesday at 2 o'clock and spend as much time as you want, and you can review the signature packets." You can't take photocopies. You can't, take photocopies of people's actual signatures, whatever. But you can review those.
Yeah.
And so we asked for that with Spencer Cox, and the answer for us was no. You can't look at those signatures. In fact, how dare you even suggest that you could come in and look at people's private information? That's the big thing. It's like, so I said, well, there's only one reason not to let us look at the signatures is because you don't have them.
Yep.
And so I made that statement early on before the primary election, and of course, that came out with all these op-eds from the lieutenant governor's office. What a conspiracy theorist I am, and I said, well, it's easy to disprove me. It's
Yeah.
until you can demonstrate otherwise. I'll just assume you don't have your signatures. Well, we found out there were criminal charges on some of the signature gatherers in another part of the state, but all the statewide races were done by a single clerk. So I said, well, you've got another clerk here that's looked through the signature packets of this individual and of another individual and found a bunch of fraudulent signatures. The same guy that was gathering for him was also gathering for Spencer Cox I'm a CPA. So for me, it's like, oh, you got two people that essentially were looking at the same work, and one's coming up with this answer. Let's see what the statewide race came up with. And so we did the grammar request. We went to court. We did all of these things, and of course the courts throw it out. They're all appointed by Governor Cox, but the same company also gathered signatures for the Attorney General and for John Curtis, the senator. And I don't question whether they got their signatures, but I said, you guys should be asking for an audit because it's the same company.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they did kind of come out and say, well, we kind of demand that our signatures be verified and remove this cloud. So they did. They audited the signatures, and what they came back with was that Spencer Cox didn't get enough signatures. He didn't have his signatures, and that should mean something. If nothing else, it should mean that they go back and say, hey, Phil, we're sorry we drug you through the mud over this. And of course, Spencer Cox is saying, well, we believed we had our signatures. We relied on the information. And it's like, well, you're in charge of that whole process. The lieutenant governor is in charge of this. And you go back and you say, well, what about these emails clear back in March of 2024, saying that you didn't have enough signatures, that you overlooked that. And then it turns in from a whatever, a competence issue into a full-fledged cover up and corruption. And I think people deserve to know if that's the case. I don't expect that the legislature is going to, impeach or remove Governor Cox, but people do need to know. And it's really has turned into a kind of a movement here in Utah of why do we allow such corruption? The very perpetrator, the very person who's putting his name on the ballot is the one who's verifying the signatures and overseeing the signature process. And even for the lieutenant governor, which is a single race in Utah, we don't have a secretary of state.
So they run on a ticket.
So they run on a ticket, yeah, and the
So
governor
they run on a ticket, and the lieutenant governor acts as the secretary of state does in most other states.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you say, well, can we look at voter lists? The lieutenant governor says, no, you may not look at voter lists. Can we look at the cast vote record? Lieutenant governor, no. Who prints the ballots? The lieutenant governor. Who verifies the results of the election? The lieutenant governor. Who verifies the signature? It's like, okay, this person can do anything they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't look at it. You can't do anything. So then you have to say, well, would this lieutenant governor cheat? Are we expected as citizens to rely just 100% on the integrity of the lieutenant governor? And there's some people that would say, yes, that's good enough. That's what we want. But for me, I say, well, let's verify. Let's just verify. And again, as a CPA, I look at it and say, well, there's a few things we could do to verify these things. But every time you do something, every time you run a statistical report or something like that, the results come back, way off. It's like from a statistical analysis, you say, well, this is a huge irregularity, almost a statistical impossibility. Let's have an explanation. And the only response you get to saying, can we get an explanation, is, to call names and call you a conspiracy theorist. And for me at this point, that's just like music to my ears, because it means it's validation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you got involved in the gubernatorial race, you said, or you ran for governor because of your belief in corruption in the elections. But if we take it back, you've been involved in politics in Utah for a long time. You've been a local, not just activist, but a local public servant. What got you involved in supporting your communities in that way?
Yes. So in 2009, Obama had just taken office, and by June of 2009, there was a massive raid on my community. I live in a small little town, very remote little southeastern town in Utah. And there was a huge raid, 300 federal agents, 26 families whose lives were really upended. And I watched that happen. And it was all under the auspice of an artifacts ring. But you find out that underlying all of that was a desire to lock up the resources in this area where the uranium rich area was, where a bunch of the uranium one claims were that Hillary Clinton, a year later sold
Wow.
to Russia. So you see all this stuff in the real
So,
question.
real quickly, the
Mhm.
artifacts ring, that would be like saying that people are trafficking in artifacts
Yeah,
that are
like
supposed to be okay.
Native American artifacts. And we're also,
Okay.
phenomenal area of the world if a person wants to look at the Anasazi ruins and find things. It's really a very rich area. So they're not wrong about this being a very rich area. They are wrong about locals looting and taking stuff. The universities and the museums have done way more of that than the locals. We really have an appreciation for it and a respect for it. So
Right.
so the whole premise is really offensive to start with, but that's what the federal government and especially the agencies do. The executive branch is they create a crisis to which they are the solution, and then they come in
Yeah.
with a heavy hand. And it'd be one thing if they're saying, we've got to stop the artifacts looting, but what it was we've got to lock up the resources of that area, and sell the uranium to Russia. So Frank Giustra, Canadian financier, comes in and he brokers the deal between the Clinton Foundation, Uranium One, and Putin, to buy out Uranium One. He made $1 billion profit on the deal, turned around and donated $110 million to the Clinton Foundation, and then a couple of years later, Russia sold those uranium claims back to another company for pennies on the dollar for what they paid for it. So then you're going like, well, what was this all about? But Putin at the time was buying up, assets in Kazakhstan and Africa and Australia and all over the world. He really had a stated purpose to corner and own the nuclear energy sector by taking all the uranium. And of course, Hillary Clinton was all in on that deal. And most people didn't see that. I was sitting at the table with, and this is as a county. So I ran for county commissioner after this raid. And in 2010, I was sitting at a table with a bunch of the uranium companies because we were dealing with President Barack Obama's, removal of a bunch of uranium property, uh, and uh, and and they
Because
came
he
and
made
said,
it federal, he federalized it. Is that what happened?
yeah, so it's all on federal land. It's all on public land. I mean, some of it's state land, some of it's private, but for the most part, these assets are sitting out on this vast federal estate, which has always had. The mining claims were legitimate mining claims. You can't remove those. So he was proposing to shut down what we call the Arizona Strip, which is a real rich area in Utah and Arizona, right on the border. And one of the companies, so I'm sitting down at lunch, and they and it was Uranium One, and they were a big player, and they said, well, we're not going to be coming anymore because we sold the company. And I said, you sold the company? And they said, yeah, to Russia. And I was like, like waiting for the punchline. You got to be kidding me. And they said, no,
Yeah.
and Hillary Clinton brokered the deal. And now I'm really waiting for the punchline.
Right.
And then you read in the papers, afterwards that that's exactly what happened. But I'm talking to the guys on the, the CEOs and the executives of Uranium One. And I think they were as surprised as anybody else. Number one, that they were able to sell that company for so much money. And number two, that it was Hillary Clinton that was brokering the deal. But, for them, it was, you can't say no to the money that was being thrown around. Anyway, that in a nutshell, what I looked at, and I said, why does government make such horrible policies that hurt the very people that they were elected to serve,
Yeah.
And so where's the representative form of government that we really, really cherish in America? The idea that if someone can make a decision that is going to hurt their neighbors, then that person is given authority to make that decision by being elected. And um, and so you get in and you start looking, and you find out, as a county commissioner, I find out that there's a lot of pressure coming from the uh, globalist interests, the Marxist interests, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, all of these policies. They're drafting legislation, they're pushing it through the National Governors Association, or whatever, all the way down through the legislatures. And so you see this in action, and the money that is exchanged with it, and you start to realize that you've got people on one hand who are honest, trying to figure out why everything is going against them, and on
Yeah.
the other hand, you got literally pirates who are running the show, and the media is behind them. The judges are in on it. It's a huge. It doesn't matter if they're Democrats, Republicans,
It doesn't
a
matter.
federal, state. All this idea of balance of powers and federalism and all that. It just goes out the window because you're dealing with people who are in on the take. They're just part of it, and they can see it, and they know that uh, that they are going to remain in power because they have certain things locked up. So all roads lead back to the election. It's like, well, maybe we could have an election and remove some of those people from power. And to me, Governor Cox was the quintessential example of a governor who was making really, really bad decisions for his state and should be challenged. And so that it was an easy decision to challenge him. And everything is I feel very inspired and directed uh, spiritually when I make certain decisions. And this has been one of those that from the very beginning has felt right, uh, and is I just opened up so many, shined a light in so many dark places.
Yeah, well, you certainly have. And as you were talking, I was reminded today of Jeffrey Epstein's claim that he co-founded the Clinton Foundation. So it'll be very interesting when this stuff all really truly unravels in a meaningful, justice-driven way to see how far down, all that is connected. Because of course, very few of us believe I don't know what Cash Patel and Pam Bondi's reasons are, and Dan Bongino for trying to tell us that there was no client list, there's no Epstein didn't kill himself, all these things, but I don't buy that for one hot second.
Yeah. I told somebody the other day, I said, in matters of espionage, you'll never know the truth.
That's
And
right.
I do agree with that to some extent, but at the same time, free people, people who are free in their soul and in their heart and who really feel it. It's like you can't overpower that. You can't take that away from them. And even though they may feel like resistance is ultimately futile, they still don't have a choice other than to resist tyranny and resist lies and to tell the truth. And as long as that's in place, government is going to have a hard time winning that battle.
Yeah. Well, I pray that this is for some other purpose and not to further lie to the American people in a bald-faced way. But I guess time will tell. I certainly hope some of those people are being rolled up, and it's just needs to be kept quiet. Um, Phil, I had first of all, I had no idea that you had any connection to Uranium One. That's just so fascinating, and and it really puts a color on all the things you've seen, because whenever you've seen that level of corruption that up close and personal, you just can't help but know that that's not the only place it is, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have something in common that I learned about today, which is I spent a lot of time traveling through Africa. I didn't realize that you did your mission in South Africa.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Beautiful, beautiful
I
place.
oh my gosh, beautiful place, beautiful people. It's just
Amazing.
so
Mhm.
wonderful. But I was a little Pollyanna in my time traveling through Africa, my 20s and 30s. And over time, I started really realizing, oh, when people say Africa's corrupt, they're not wrong. But what was worse was when I came back home and finally woke up and realized we're just as bad. Actually, we're worse, because in some ways, many countries in Africa have a free press, and we don't have any
Right.
any any semblance of a free press other than people like myself, people, who have basically popped up since 2020. So anyway, I just wanted to make that connection because corruption is everywhere. It's a global epidemic. It's not, if it's at your doorstep, you have to know that it's basically at everyone's.
Well, and I mean, it is the topic of most of literature from the very beginning through Rome is like, how do you have the structure that you want on the one hand without it being corrupted. So the Romans and the Republican form of government that they came up with, and then the founding fathers obviously were really keenly aware of the problems that come from tyrants, and they tried to create and that's what's so beautiful about America. It's like the one time you can go back and say they took on power, they challenged power at the highest level, and they succeeded, and they created something that changed the whole face of humanity. And it's too important to to watch it be corrupted and start to lose that. But clearly, if people could take control of the planet, they would do it, and they would take control of the resources
Yeah.
and the water and the people and the food, the healthcare, the education, our kids. That's one of the things I said on the campaign trail. I said, these people are not coming for your money. They have all the money in the world. They're coming for your children, and
Yeah.
they want to indoctrinate them. They want to, your children are going to see the world in a very different light than the way we see it, especially people that are believers, believe in God, believe in the divine destiny of the soul and individuality and all those things. That is contrary to what the globalists want. They do not want individual thinkers. They want collective thought.
You're so right. And on that point of they're not coming for your money, they already have. If you
Right.
believe that all taxation is theft, they have already robbed us blind every which way from Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, inflation is the hugest tax that we face, and we have
Yeah.
no control over that. They can just go and print, another $1 trillion, add another $5 trillion to the deficit. Back in 2000, it was around 2006. I was looking at the deficit, and I can't remember exactly where I was at. But it was like at $8 trillion, and I did the math, and I thought we have reached the point of no return. There's no recovery from this massive, massive
Yeah.
amount of debt, and now we're pushing 40 trillion, and I'm at the point now. It's like I don't know. I guess it's irrelevant. I guess they can push that to an unlimited amount. I don't know what the no one ever plans on paying this off, and it's
Right.
really a frightening proposition for America. And the other thing you say is, well, is America $40 trillion in debt because we don't have resources, or is it because we don't have innovation, people that are willing to work? It's like there's only one reason for America to be in debt to anybody, and that's because of the plunder. That's just it's a system. It's designed to rob not only Americans but the entire world of the wealth, and to put it in the pockets of fewer and fewer people. Um, and you watch that happen.
Yeah. You're so right. I have kind of an inkling of a theory. So you as a CPA would have a better, especially someone who has worked in the government. But my inkling of a theory is that we don't ever actually need to pay taxes. Like, there's no reason American people should pay taxes because of the resources that we have at our fingertips.
Right.
Instead, we could have fee-based services, so you only pay for what you get, at a maximum. But we could also, I mean, the government could be producing stuff, or we could be producing stuff that uh, that covers the cost. I mean, look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia basically didn't exist before 1970, whenever we went in and taught them how to get oil out of the ground. And now
Hmm.
all of the people of Saudi Arabia, they have a sovereign wealth fund. They don't have to pay for their beautiful roads. They don't have to pay for their beautiful bridges. They just simply get to enjoy the
Yeah.
fruit of the land.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Ours is an income redistribution system. It's got
Yeah.
very little to do with paying for things. I mean, it goes back to Adam Smith and the free market conversations, and you're absolutely right. And I was pushing for that in Utah also during the governor's race. I said we don't need an income tax. We can pay our bills with a severance tax, which is the minerals.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Now it would be harder in Utah than it is in, say, Alaska, where you've got 10 times the area and a tenth of the population, but
Sure.
we have massive, massive resources. And the beautiful thing about moving to a severance tax or a minerals-based tax is now the motivation for governments is to produce instead of to stop production.
How
And
about
that's what we
that?
see now is like shut it all down, shut down, blow up your energy plants, get rid of all of your mines, get rid of all of your production, and just raise people's taxes and
Hmm.
uh,
Perpetuity.
perpetuity. And it's and yeah, that gets to a point where at some point somebody's got to produce something, and if they don't, then they're nothing but slaves. And that is that's I think we're there. I would say
Yeah,
America is there.
I think we are. I absolutely think we are. What do you think? Have you been dwelling on at all uh, Elon Musk and this new America Party thing? Have you given that any thought?
Yeah. Um, yeah, lots of contemplation about that. Uh, the GOP has abandoned us. You know, the faithful platform Republicans have really felt abandoned. Yet, I like the platform of the GOP, and I don't see a viable. I shouldn't say I don't see a viable. The future of a viable candidate coming out of a new party like that is a ways down the road. But
Yeah,
and I'm not sure that Elon Musk is the right person to launch that.
yeah,
Just ideologically, it puts a few people, and really, what it does is it really targets more Republicans than just American truth lovers. But I mean, I applaud his effort. I applaud what he's
yeah.
doing. Yeah, I'm a libertarian at heart, and I always tell people, I said it's an oxymoron to say that to join the libertarian parties because libertarians don't join parties. They're independent, So
Yeah,
you can be a libertarian and be a Republican. But to join the Libertarian Party, I mean, I love Ross Perot. He's really one of my favorite people, and we saw what happened
yeah.
with his runs for office um, and things like that. It really divided the parties, but
Yeah, part of me wonders if this is just part of a distraction campaign for something else. I
all of
feel
it
like
feels.
a
That's what I thought with the big beautiful bill, and I love the
yeah,
big beautiful bill, but I thought the only person that would call it that is Trump, and the only reason he would call it that is to like pay no attention to what is actually
mhm,
going on in the Middle East or something. Or
yeah,
let's focus on this. It's really interesting.
yeah,
I think it's smart. I think it's strategic. I think it's clever. But I feel the same way about so much of what's happening, that it feels more like a psyop.
yeah, it does feel like a sigh. Part of what I was wondering or just kind of tinkering with is this idea that once once the American public really realizes what the Uniparty has done and how depraved and corrupt so many of these people are on both sides of the quote unquote aisle, the parties are going to have to collapse. And and in some way you could say this is a place for them to go, but I think if we really think about an America Party, forget Elon Musk, forget his little Indian guy that set up the thing. Uh, I mean, people should not have a political party. I don't really believe in political parties. They're corporations. They serve the interest of whoever holds the purse. And I think people need to run on their own merit, on their own value systems, and not clutch at whatever they think the constituents of the given district or area um, are. Like I come from a very conservative area. And so we have a tremendous number of rhinos here because everyone just wears the red badge, like, so that they can get elected. And as soon as they get elected, they do whatever they want.
So I did run for the state party chair, and again, it was more just a way to keep the wheels churning on exposing corruption, and
Yeah.
it was very, very effective. And I gave a speech at convention, and it was one of those times when I felt so compelled to say some things that you would never typically hear at a convention, and you'll appreciate it because you're a religious minded person. But I stood up and I said, after Jesus taught the parable of the sower, and just mentioning the word Jesus in a political is like there was like an audible gasp. My wife said there was an audible gasp when you said the name Jesus, and there's power in that name. But
Yeah.
and I tried to explain it in like the most common language, but the story was after he taught that parable of the sower, his disciples came and says, why do you teach in parables? And I'll get to the point of this. And he said, well, he said, Isaiah prophesied that people would have eyes that wouldn't see and ears that wouldn't
Mm.
hear, hearts that wouldn't feel. But when I teach in parables, there might be some people that hear that who will see with their eyes, who will hear with their ears, will feel with their hearts, and will be converted, and I can heal them.
Mm.
And I told that story. But the point of that is like, do you feel it with your heart, or are you just reading, and whether it's freedom or anything else, like we've got all the stuff written in the Constitution, and the people have it memorized. They memorize the Declaration of Independence, but it's like, do they really feel it? And my point was, the GOP is so fractured in Utah that what's going to unify us is that I love freedom just like you love freedom. And whether you're Democrat or wherever you're at on the political spectrum,
Yeah.
freedom means freedom, man. And if we feel that, then we act differently than if it's all just politics, and everything is politics. And so I'm with you on that. I think at some point, I think our love of country, our love of family and society and for each other transcends the political fighting that's going on. And I don't know how close we are to that actually happening, but I really felt that. And it was funny because Jesus said, that so many people, they hear those parables, and they don't know what he's even talking about. It's just mass
Yeah.
confusion. And after the convention, I had people come up, who, some members of my faith, some not members of my faith, and said, wow, I never expected to feel the Holy Spirit at a political convention. That was amazing. And other people who were pious, religious people, that said, Lyman's speech was a word salad. It was pure gibberish. And I thought, bravo, this is like,
Separating the wheat from the chaff
I
there.
watched it happen. I watched it, and I felt it too. There's 4,000 people there, and I looked around that room, and I thought, some of you are going to get this, and some of you aren't. But it's time. It's time for people to put aside the party stuff in favor of their heart. The love of America. And
I agree with you.
whether that happens, I guess it does for some of us, and that's probably the best. I mean, that's probably God's plan. Some will and some won't.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, he wills that we all would, but I guess, not all are willing.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't finish with so I did go to jail after the,
Yeah.
standing up for and it was all based back to that uranium stuff, and watching all this happen, watching the shutdown of the national parks in October of 2013. And we're surrounded by national parks out here, and it's like turning your economy off like a light switch, and just watching the Clinton Foundation and the uranium one. And then and my town had been raided and people's lives destroyed. A good friend of mine that committed suicide the following morning, trying to protect his family. So it's like, it's not abstract on these things, but I felt an obligation just to keep calling out the Bureau of Land Management. And next thing you know, I'm being prosecuted for conspiracy to trespass, and the most bogus charge. But you go through the court system, you go through all that, then you go to jail. And and when you sit in a jail, it was a very, very real experience. And
it was a federal prison, right? This
federal,
was the
right?
federal government came after you.
Yeah, it was the federal government. And I spent 15 months. I was on the front page of the Salt Lake Tribune. This was a misdemeanor conspiracy to trespass. Like, see, no one's ever heard of it before or since.
Exactly.
And my attorney, or an attorney friend of mine at the beginning, said, take no comfort in the fact that you're innocent. This is federal court, and it makes no difference. And I thought he was being, cynical, but I found out that was really true. But all those things, you go back and you just think, really, what a blessing it is to kind of see things for what they really are, and maybe lose the the concept that people have your best interests at heart, especially in the government. Um, and if that's the reality, if government in reality is does not have our best interest in heart, then people have to wake up to that, and then they have to make changes. In
Yeah.
America, thank goodness, it still is our government. We still can't affect it, even if it means taking some aggressive measures to enforce our elections and to get things in place. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at, I think. In Utah, that's where we're at.
It's amazing the weaponization of government that had happened even before it was really in the public view. I mean, of course, the J6ers, everybody knows about them as being political prisoners. You think about Tina Peters, and, she's a hero sitting in prison still today under state charges because they wanted to shield her from any potential pardons or any aspect of the federal government that could come to her aid. What was prison like for you, and Phil, were there other people that were wrapped up in that, or did they just target you?
So they prosecuted five individuals, and they tried us all together, which really hampers your defense, because
Yeah.
especially for me, because I was obviously the target, and I thought, whatever I do is going to cost these other people. Um,
So hence the conspiracy charge. That's why they did
right,
the conspiracy so they could
right.
weaken your due process.
Which if they'd had five separate trials, I would have gone in, guns blazing
Sure.
with my defense. But it was I need to write a book about it, because all of the stuff that happened, all the players, and all of the palace intrigue that was happening behind the scenes, and I mean, it could go on and on and on. But so I was expecting, they wanted 2 years, they wanted at least 2 years to sentence me to jail. And when it came down to sentencing, I had four federal judges that had recused, spent $400,000 in legal fees, um, and four judges recused. And when the chief judge came time for sentencing, he kind of reprimanded the prosecution. Um, he didn't grant a new trial, which he should have done, but he sentenced me to 10 days. So that was like Christmas for me.
Yeah.
You can go for 10 days, and but it was a very real 10 days. And when you ask what it was like, I walked in there. I was booked into jail, and it's not fun, and it's really invasive, and just almost dehumanizing. And but the 10 days, I met a lot of people in jail. I was in maximum security, uh, and I got to know some people. And when I got out, after about 3 months, my wife said, "Phil, you've got to stop sending money to these people." They had nobody. They had nobody. And
Yeah. Yeah.
commissary is a big deal. You don't have a
Yeah.
wedding ring, you don't have a wallet, you have no identity. And some of these people had nobody.
Yeah.
And so I was sending a lot of money to commissary accounts, just because my heart was just like broken for these people. And anyway, gained an appreciation for what they're dealing with, and
Yeah.
what their families are dealing with. Uh, yeah, it was honestly, it's such a learning experience. Alexander Solzhenitsyn talks about, I can't remember what he calls his jail, but his blessed his blessed jail or something. And I could kind of relate to that, even though I don't want to take away from anybody that's done a hard time, because I 10 days is not a hard time, but it was very real.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. No doubt at all. We've interviewed a handful of J6ers. We talked to Tina before she went in a number of times. And what's remarkable to me is just the lack of justice and the absolute need for true justice reform, because or criminal justice reform. The way that I'm sure it's others besides Soros, but Soros obviously has been stealing our money somehow and through probably USAID. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
hard fact at this point. And he's been manufacturing candidates and rigging elections so that we have no justice and we have no recourse in these matters. And it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Tina's a close personal friend of mine,
Is she?
and we're in neighboring counties. She's in Colorado, I'm in Utah, but our counties are neighboring,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, so I've been with her from the very beginning of her ordeal. But so ironic that the one person who's telling the truth is sitting in jail, and all of the liars, all of the cheaters
Yeah.
are not. And they're uh, the fact I don't accept the narrative that that President Trump couldn't affect that. If
Right.
it's like in the civil rights arena, the federal government has a long history of overriding the states and saying, no, you just can't do that to people. And vice versa. The states sometimes have to override the federal government and say, no,
Yeah.
we're not going to put up with that, just like Texas did with the immigration issue. So the idea that that Tina Peters can be sitting in a cell while we talk about jurisdiction is really,
Right.
to me, that's contrary to what President Trump should be about. And I'm not critical of President Trump on many things, but I have been critical about him for allowing this to go on with Tina Peters. It's a betrayal because her actions were purely, in support of fair elections.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff.
It is crazy, and I really loved Bannon's idea of just shut off all funds to
Absolutely.
Colorado
Yeah.
until they cry uncle, and let's
Yeah.
just see how it goes.
Yeah. It's like to say, it's like people say, well, what could we do? It's like, what can't you do? Well, I
Yeah,
mean, what you're the president of the United States. What can't you do? Or
that's
Pam
right.
Bondi or Cash Patel or any of them. It's like, let's stop this. And at the same time, and I know this is so hard on Tina. It's hard on her health. I mean, they destroyed
Yeah,
her before she went to jail.
yeah, they
Her
really did.
marriage and her husband and her family relationship. And here's a gold star mom who's,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, it's almost biblical to see what she's been set up for. And I
yeah,
don't know what effect she's having on the people around her in prison, but my guess is that she's having a profound effect on those people
yeah,
for the good. So I look at it and I say, praise God, and bless Tina.
yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. And she is receiving mail. So if anyone wants to write her a letter, we can get the address to her. But yeah, I know she needs all the encouragement she can get.
yeah,
What
it's
a
it's
warrior.
it's astonishing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of to jog back to GOP and state level corruption. Now that you've spent a lot of time thinking, wading through the swamp, so to speak, in Utah, do you have any? Can you say where you think what the source of the corruption is? Does it all trace back to a single source, or is it all opportunistic?
It feels so broad and like it's got all these tentacles. As you start to bring it back in, though, you get back to your voter list, uh, and the illegal aliens that are added to the voter list, the people that are supposed to oversee that voter list, the ERIC system, Electronic Records Information
Yeah.
Center, overseen by basically the Democrat get out the vote people. Uh, so it starts with the voter lists, and those are inaccessible. In Utah, you cannot look at your voter list,
Hmm.
unconstitutionally. So we've got a lawsuit. Public Interest Legal Foundation picked up my lawsuit that I'd had going for several months, and they picked that up. So they're helping to cover the cost of that. But basically, the Constitution, the Voter Rights Act says that's public. That's our list. It belongs
Yeah.
to us. It doesn't belong to the state. It belongs to the people, and that we have a right to see it so that we can verify that it's accurate. We have universal mail-in ballots, which are essential to the steal, and that's a big part of it. Then you've got the verification process that's going on with the clerks and the machines, and um, just the whole apparatus that tabulates votes and calculates votes, and and then no ability to look into that as well. You know, the cast vote record is another really important for me. I call it like the detailed general ledger from an accountant standpoint. That's where you
Yeah.
can go in and you can look at details, not individuals information. There's nothing there that would show an individual's vote, but you can see when the votes came in, where the precincts are.
Yeah.
You can start to do some statistical analysis. And so that in a statistical analysis, if I want to say, well, what is the voter turnout in a precinct? Number one, I need to know how many registered voters there are in the precinct. Then I need to see how many votes were in that precinct. Well, they've said, no, you cannot look at the voter list. You can't look at how many registered voters are in that precinct. You can't verify them. And now you can't even look at what I would say is the numerator, the actual votes that were cast in that precinct. And we get a little bit of information, and we do the statistical analysis on that. And it comes back again, like I said, it comes back indicating some serious problems. And that's the furthest we get. We go to the courts. I've spent probably $200,000 this last year and a half on legal expenses, all of them related to the election and exposing those things. And it's really painful. And I have a
Yeah.
few people that are, helping to cover the costs. Some very generous people that help with that. But a lot of it's, people are digging deep into their own pockets, myself included. But it feels like we have to crack this nut open in order to really look at it. California, they did a big audit of their voter rolls and found so many, fraudulent entries on the voter list rolls, whether it's illegal aliens or dead people or whatever it might be. All of that becomes basically the credit line to draw on when you want to affect an election. And they're saying with the cleanup that they've done in California is very likely to turn red in the next election. It has a huge effect. And that just tells you the only reason it's not red now is because of blatant cheating.
Yeah.
And
Have you spent any time daydreaming about what Utah would look like if/when Trump gets to the bottom of the 2020 election and forces out into the open the fact that all of the machines are fraudulent?
oh man, I do. I think I think about that all the time. And what it is it's that freedom of free markets and people making good decisions for their children, and freedom to choose your schools and the curriculum. And I think the whole corruption just starts to give way to people's better judgment and individuals' better judgment. It's uh, personhood, parenthood, and statehood. Those things are really important. If you don't
Yeah.
understand personhood or parenthood, then you get statehood wrong. Next thing you know, you're giving the federal government authority to control all of your resources in your state. It was never designed to be that way. But it all serves the pirate class that is intent on plundering the state, and it's really expensive. It hurts people. You get rid of that element, I'm telling you, it'd be like the kingdom of God restored to the earth. And
Yeah.
we look forward to that day, and I do look forward to it. And whether we can accomplish it or it's going to take a bigger event, I think about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful picture that you paint, and you were talking about the voter rolls being basically ground zero for the steal. And I couldn't agree with you more. And Tina had an interesting point. She said that they should be wiped I think she said every year they should be wiped, or every 2 years. Are you familiar with Ed Solomon? He's a mathematician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His view,
Yeah.
I love his view the best, and I love Tina's the best until I heard his, which is no voter rolls.
Yeah.
Show up just like you would if you were gonna get a
I
new
love that
phone.
too. I think they do that in Montana, or
Really?
yeah, somebody would say that they don't have voter rolls. You show up
Bring
with your driver's license.
Yeah, and your utility bill, and done and done.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
The way we did elections for so many years, where you show up on election day, your vote was cast at the precinct and verified by people who knew who you were anyway, and it's
Yeah.
counted at the precinct level. and then they report that up to the chain, and by 10 o'clock that night we have the election results. The only reason to have universal mail-in ballots is for the purpose of stealing an election. There's no
Yeah.
reason why we have universal mail-in ballots. It's more
Yeah.
expensive. It disrupts the chain of custody, and really, really kills our system.
Yeah. Since we're talking about Utah as a state, I think about what General Flynn often says, local action equals national impact. And I have a friend who's in Maine, and he just feels like he's banging his head against the wall because he feels this people of the state are so apathetic. That's not the sense I get from you with Utah. It sounds like people are pretty activated. What's moving the needle there for y'all?
Honestly, it is kind of getting those people who love honesty and truth talking to each other. And it's like you like starting that fire from the remaining coals. Is you put a few of those together, and pretty soon they strengthen each other. The best way to keep that from happening is to keep those people from talking to each other.
Yeah.
And so for me in Utah, I would say we're in, 10%, 15% of the people that are awake and aware and watching what's going on, but those people are now talking to each other. Social media, I always say, God bless Elon Musk for keeping us, talking to each other through Twitter. But social media is powerful, and people talking to each other. It's hard to keep the truth buried forever. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, and the Bible says that everything hidden will come to light. So I'm looking forward to being this many years old whenever everything that's hidden comes to light. I don't want
I,
I don't
I, I
want I don't want to wait
yeah,
very much longer, Phil.
I appreciate that so much. Well, honestly, I appreciate, this program is such a good example of people that are, able to come on and talk about things. But one thing I have learned, I believe, is patience and faith.
Yeah.
If it happens soon, I'll be happy. If it takes a long time, I'll be happy. It's somebody else is in charge of that. We just do our best, and God's in charge of the results. And I've become very comfortable with that,
Yeah.
with that feeling of, because he really is in charge. I've seen such miracles. I told somebody that I said, I feel like we've just been tossed along on a river of miracles. And when you look back on your life, and for me, I look back on my family, my kids, the lessons that they've learned, the values that they have. And I just think, just believe, and do your best, and God will do some miracles for us. I know that's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, it is happening. You're so right. Well, where do you go from here? I was so happy to hear that you have already announced your intention to challenge Spencer Cox again, or to run for governor again. So you're remaining in the fight despite all of the efforts to discourage you and defame you. Tell us
Yeah.
tell us about that.
So before, in one of the debates with Spencer Cox, they said, "Will you accept the results of the election?" And I said, I will commit to verify the results of the election, whether I win or lose." And those words have kind of come back to haunt me, because I'm still committed to that promise.
Yeah.
I am going to verify the results of that election, and that means that I don't concede, I don't go away, and um, I, I guess I reserve the right to change my mind about running in 2028. But the answer is, yeah, absolutely, I'm running in 2028, and until we learn the truth, then yeah, the fight isn't taking me anywhere else besides where I'm at right now. So so I'm in that, and hoping, honestly, for a off ramp that um, that someone else, can take that, or that we clean things up before that happens.
Yeah.
Because I am not an office seeker. I just I just I just really believe in government. I believe in representative government, and we should fight for it.
We should. Well, no offense to your feelings, Phil, but I want you to do it. I think I think the people of Utah want you to do it. So I pray that things get come to light between now and then, and maybe it'll have to be sooner than 2028. That's my prayer. I want clean
Me too.
houses before
Me too.
long before then.
Yep.
And when you were saying that Spencer Cox wanted you to say that you would concede the election or admit that the election, the results of the election, that there is a demonic entity that forces all of these uniparty people to say that. I don't understand what it is,
And so
but
many do it.
they say it. And I'm like, it's because they understand the power of words and they know that words are won and, battles are won and lost in the mind.
Hmm.
And so if you're going to concede it, if you're here, what does Jesus say? We learn by hearing and every word by the mouth of God. Well,
Right.
if the words that we say inform our mind in a way, right? Like if you think you're reading scripture, you're meditating on scripture. So you would be reinforcing your own mindset, I think. I don't know if I'm making a whole lot of sense here, but I think that would the concession is, I mean, the defeat in the spiritual is just as real, if not more real than the defeat in the physical. Anyway, I
Uh,
don't know if that makes sense.
it absolutely makes sense, and it's so powerful. And honestly, I've got a handful of people close to me. My wife being chief among them, who she just doesn't have the tolerance for. First of all, she doesn't admire cowards, and second of all, she really expects people to stand up and do the right thing. And so it's really it really fortifies you, and our circle of friends. In politics, it was kind of shrinking every year, and then running for
Yeah.
governor, it's really expanded in a really beautiful way. We're surrounded by people who feel the same way that you do, uh, and and they are believers. And I had a really spiritual experience in jail, and I won't go into it, but the message, the words that came to me were, now is the time, and now is my work made manifest,
Mhm.
and kind of like bear witness, and it's, yeah, strengthen your resolve and bear witness to my ability to accomplish unspeakable good. And and it I totally lean on that so much, and I just think now's the time, and it's going to happen, and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be an observer or a participant or whatever, but it's something significant is going to take place. And yeah, I don't want to be a coward.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly not. And I'm just so appreciative for you standing up, saying the truth, whether people think, I don't know what if people think that people are lunatics, but they love to say it. Maybe they think it, but they surely love to call us conspiracy theorists, right wing fanatics, lunatics, whatever demeaning words they can use to basically silence us, cow us. Um, so I just appreciate your courage and your tenacity because it's so needed in this time and so few. I mean, I in a way so few people have stood up. In a way so many people have stood up, but I
Right.
think you're right, courage begets courage, and it takes a central figure to cause to get a groundswell of support for an idea, or for truth or for freedom. And I think that's what we're living in the midst of. And I mean, it's a great honor and a privilege to be living in this time where I do think we're in 1776 2.0, and how long the
Yeah.
war lasts is only God knows.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great 4th of July celebration, and thinking about that, it's just like, because like you say, those people didn't know. They didn't know what the outcome was. They probably assumed that the odds were more likely that they would, you know, be hung as
Yeah,
traitors. But something inside of them said, you know, liberty or death.
that's it.
There's not a middle choice there. So it's not, and I tell people that all the time. This is not my fight. This is the fight.
Yeah.
This is what we're here for. So win or lose, it's we got to be in it.
Yeah, we do. Well, how can people follow you? How can people support your commitment to uncover what happened in 2024 in Utah and whatever work you're doing towards your campaign now?
Social media, my X post is probably where most of the relevant stuff is. I do have a website, Lyman for Utah, and that's FOR, Lyman FOR Utah. It's my governor's page, and there's a lot of governor stuff on there. I haven't really like tried to go into anything else, but it does have, you know, links to articles and all this information about immigration and the role that it plays in our elections and things like that. But my X post, Phil underscore Lyman, and yeah, just yeah, all the social media, Facebook, Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking some time with me today. It's so lovely getting to chat with you, and I will encourage you. Please do write that book because you have some inside knowledge that I think needs to be more widespread. People need to know what really went down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel very compelled to do it. And I've sat down and tried. My hat's off to anybody that can write a book because it's not easy. But I've tried to kind of start that.
Well, maybe we need to send out a call for some ghostwriters so you can sit
There
down
you
and
go.
tell your story. I think people do a great job with that. You know, it's
Yeah,
some people are really great at it.
yeah, it's true.
Awesome. Well, God bless you, Phil. Please keep me posted and feel free. You're always welcome here on For the Love of Freedom and the State of Freedom, wherever you want to give your updates.
Well, thanks again, and yeah, yeah. God bless you for doing this and staying with it. And thanks for the encouragement, and not for just me, but for, you know, all of the listeners. And yeah, you're awesome. I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you, Phil. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, Danielle, thanks.
Thanks.
See ya.